Hello and welcome. The title of this panel today is Accelerating Change Across the Air Force. I'm Orville Wright, President of the Air Force Association, your Air Force Association, and I had the honor of facilitating this session with 7 incredible MAJCOM commanders. Joining me today are General Tim Ray, Commander, Air Force Global Strike Command, General Jeff Harrigian, Commander, U.S. Air Forces in Europe, General Arnie Bunch, Commander, Air Force Materiel Command, General Ken Wilsbach, Commander, Pacific Air Forces, General Jackie Van Ovost, Commander, Air Mobility Command, General Mark Kelly, Commander, Air Combat Command, and Lieutenant General Brad Webb, Commander, Air Education and Training Command. We cannot thank our MAJCOM commanders enough for their leadership and taking the time today to update our congressional leadership, Department of Defense counterparts, and industry partners. We're going to take an around-the-world tour of our MAJCOMs during this 60-minute session. And I've asked each of our panelists today to cover 3 points in their remarks. First, in the context of the Chief's exhortation to accelerate change or lose, what are the most significant changes the Air Force must address in the next 5 years? Second, what are you doing to accelerate change in your MAJCOM? And third, what are you asking of your airmen to fulfill General Brown's admonition to accelerate the change necessary for us to remain the most dominant and respected Air Force in the world? As most every airman begins his or her Air Force journey in Air Education and Training Command, we'll start today with Lieutenant General Brad Webb, the Commander of Air Education and Training Command, to please lead off. And then we'll go in order next to General Ray and around the world, really, to each of our MAJCOM commanders. So General Webb, over to you, and thanks again from San Antonio.
Orville, thanks very much for the opportunity to address AFA today. Obviously, very critical questions that you've posed, and I'm really honored to be able to inject, kind of the view from Air Education and Training Command. Obviously, the first command that will kind of hope to set this off. What I'd like to do really is address why I think General Brown has been so insistent on accelerating change or lose. And really that encapsulates the why. And his approach has been about the why, the how, and the what. So his point is that success in the air or success in combat is not a birthright. Our competitors have studied U.S. ways of war hard, and we need to get after it. Now, the United States Air Force has identified many ways in which we can improve. We simply need to move out in that kind of methodology. So from the standpoint of accelerating change or lose from an Air Education and Training Command perspective, really I orient this, and really our efforts inside the command are on the airman's mind. The airman that we need today is not the airman that we're going to need tomorrow to be successful. The airman that we have today is not going to be the airman we need to be successful tomorrow. And that's the airman both from an instructor perspective and also our newest service members. We simply must be able to innovate both in how we think and learn and how we utilize technology. So such aspects as empowerment, initiative, analytical and critical thinking, speed, all these become very, very important for our airmen. So from the how perspective, General Brown kind of orients us on what he calls his action orders, or really their accelerants. The A is airmen, B is bureaucracy, C is competition, D is design implementation. Really wheelhouse for Air Education and Training Command is the A, or the airmen. So that doesn't mean that it's exclusive to any one of our major commands, but probably main effort inside of Air Education and Training Command is on this A. So key to the developing the airmen that we need for tomorrow is what we call multi-capable airmen. That is an airman that has an agile mindset, can understand commander's order intent, understands mission type orders, and has the wherewithal to be able to move out and be successful. So key in this area is what we call our force development. In force development, about 2 years ago, the Air Force made the decision to dual hat the Air Education and Training Command commander as the force development commander. And we've made significant strides towards that end. As you would expect, we work hand in glove with our with our air staff, A1 in particular. But it's a complete focus on airmen, innovation, and education and training methods that really bring us to the 21st century way of learning and molding our new service members. Diversity as a warfighting imperative is absolutely also critical. There are any number of efforts that we have in Air Education and Training Command from a rated diversity initiative where we've all but eliminated the height restrictions that we've had for our pilot force. We've revamped a number of the tests to kind of shake out the socio and economic barriers to moving forward, and we've had a number of successes in that area. And another real key success that we've had here in the last year is our ability to consolidate our medical accessions program so that we are able to look at those unique wooden shoes that we have inside our formation and ensure that we can properly either assess them or get them into pilot training or the flying training career field as appropriate. And that applies for our Air Force Academy, our OTC, and our OTS. And we've recently expanded that into our basic military training and tech training on the enlisted side as well. So some real significant milestones along that area of force development. Of course, recruiting falls in the Air Force as well. The mantra here is really, do you want to serve full-time? Do you want to serve part-time? Do you want to serve in uniform, or do you want to serve in civilian clothes and be a contributor to our United States Air Force? And so we have done we have led in a number of areas of getting the National Guard, the Air Force Reserve Command, obviously our active duty, and we're working the civilian efforts to align towards that as well, and had a number of successes. On the Air University or education front, we are very focused on revamping all the curriculum to really apply to the global power competition, specifically with areas on obviously Russia and China, to where a significant amount of our content is directed strictly at that. And finally, in our line of training, there are any number of efforts from flying training to technical training, even to include basic military training, where we're incorporating such wide technology aspects as virtual reality, artificial intelligence, data analytics, dipping our toes into machine learning. Probably pilot training transformation gets a lot of the press. We are full-fledged in the UPT 2.5, where we see our airmen winged after 6 months in the T6. But there are any number of efforts, whether it's RPA, helicopters, civilian path to wings, and it includes human performance programs as well. All of this is because we really focus on the aspect of getting to student-centered learning and pushing early access to content to our airmen. That's a real quick slice, Orville, of what's happening inside Air Education and Training Command. But the point is, the airmen that we have today simply can't be the airmen that we have tomorrow. And we here, the First Command, are taking that to new heights in all those areas. Thanks very much for the time, Orville.
Thanks, sir. Great comments. We'll go next to General Ray, and rather than my introducing each of you, just hand it off to the next MAGCOM commander. So General Ray, then General Harrigian, General Bunch, General Wilsbach, General Van Ovost, and General Kelly to wrap up. And again, we've got about 60 minutes, hitting right on time here, about 7 minutes each. And General Webb, thanks again for kicking us off. I think we'd all go back, everybody on this net would go back and start right over in pilot training tomorrow if we could, and rejoin you. So thanks very much. So General Ray, please, and then we'll go right down the lineup.
Well, thanks for having this team on the net, and certainly for what AFA does for us every year. It's a great opportunity to be here and talk about the future. So the first question is, what do we have to do to accelerate change or lose? I think the Chief's got it right, that the structure of his arguments it couldn't be better. And when I think about what it means to go faster and better, I think about an experience I had in Afghanistan. So I was responsible for building the Afghan Air Force. And when I tried to fix problems, every time I touched something, it seemed like, you have that itch in your back, or every time you scratch, it just keeps moving and you can't catch up. Every time I tried to solve a problem over there, it just kept moving around the circle. And after a few trips around the track, I realized there are 4 pillars here that really dictated everything. The 4 pillars I think are really important for us to accelerate, change, or lose. Has to start with what Brad just talked about, the human capital. The second pillar has got to be our infrastructure. The third has got to be our ability to sustain and manage technology. And the fourth pillar is the ability to really accurately, smartly think about the future and plan a program for it. When I talk about those 4 pillars, it's everything. And so if those have ossified over time, it doesn't matter what you want to do, you're not going to get there from here, right? So I look at the futures games and I think those are tremendous. I come back into the conversation of what we're going to do. It's simply to begin making trades in the palm, but we haven't done anything to set the table. And so the action orders are key. I think we get after the bureaucracy and some of the other issues, but until that planning and programming process doesn't try to just sell off everything, that's old to get to the new, it actually takes some time to come back and really consider the human capital about who we need to have in our ranks, who needs to be in the depots and program offices, how we need to do for software and all those other kinds of data skills. The infrastructure is everything. You have a synthetic data-based environment to do the things we need to do from a training, from a test and evaluation, and from moving forward. And certainly the portfolio of very old things that we have out there to sustain just makes things incredibly interesting. So the ability to step back and say, what is the smart thing to have on the ramp or in the ground or on our teams or on our nets that we can rapidly modify and upgrade, and to keep the best of industry bringing that leading edge tech to us where it's actually very easy to do. But that planning and programming process, we're living year to year. And as long as we keep doing that, we're just going to bang off the guardrails with the difficult conversations that we continue to have. And so it's got to be a more thoughtful step back and really build a better purposeful trip around those 4 pillars, and then make that something viable that can deliver anything we want on a more repeatable basis. What I've asked the command to do here to get after this, when I look at everything we're bringing to the table and everything I have in the field or in the ground right now, we absolutely have to embrace that value proposition of owning the technical baseline, being modular in design, being digital where you can, and then to have, that open mission system structure. And that combination makes some amazing opportunities much more realistic. You've got to have that baked in, but you also need to, I think, bake in that sustainable picture. GBSD versus Minuteman III. I know that debate's going to play out. Minuteman III was never meant to be in the ground for more than 10 years. And here we are 45, 50 years later. GBSD is built to be in the ground for decades and to do those kinds of things. But certainly you need the processes, and that's what I've asked the team to go build, where we routinely talk to the Intel community, routinely talk to the tech experts out there, both inside the Air Force, those small business innovators, and to talk to the sustainers and to think about how we purposefully drive the affordability and the capability of those step increases in what we sustain in the future. The helicopter, the ICBM, the cruise missile, the new bomber, every single one of those programs will be backed up by a quote corporate process where we bring in the NASIC teammates, we bring in AFRL and others, and that we talk about those increments of capability we need. And when you own all those attributes, then you could be brutally rigorous and ruthless on keeping the requirements stable. And when you can do that, you're very predictable to industry and you move very quickly and you can be affordable and you can bring those things on. The idea of being able to bring on a new missile onto the B-21 used to be in the B-2 world, might be several years. I'm talking several months for our ability to bring on new capabilities very quickly. And so there's no need to actually move beyond that. I think the other thing that I'm going to ask my Stryker Airmen to continue to do, we wrote Stryker culture and its 4 key pillars of, being authentic leaders, having a collaborative environment, and doing a great job of connecting. But we want that innovative ecosystem to keep thriving, and all the things we're doing with StrikeWorks and what we're doing with the small business contracts. And every bit of that's underwritten by authentic leaders and trust. The currency of influence is trust. And if we're not in the business of doing that with an all-volunteer force in 2021, then we're never going to get to where we need to go. So I just appreciate the time to come in and talk to you guys. And so I'll hand it over now.
Okay, thanks, General Ray. And again, thanks to General Wright and the AFA team for pulling this together. It's a great opportunity to offer our perspective from USAF, the FF. And as both previous MAGCOM commanders have highlighted, we are lockstep with the chief in where he's going with respect to accelerating change. In fact, what I would offer to the collective audience out there is from our MAGCOM's perspective, the chief has provided us the guidance, the orders to backstop our thinking, but importantly, to turn his words into action and generate the speed that he's looking for as we review where we're at and where we need to go. And I'd offer that one of the areas that his guidance has offered us an opportunity to reflect on is what is the fundamental, or one of the fundamental capabilities that our Air Force brings to the nation and to the Joint Force. And for my perspective, this takes us back to air superiority and what we deliver to the nation. I'd offer that air superiority in itself enables the core Air Force missions that we deliver that provide the credible defense, takes us through crisis and then into conflict if required, and ensure that we can hold targets at risk around the world, whether that be for General Ray's team, in accordance with efforts that General Wilsbach's got going on. But ultimately, it enables the freedom of maneuver that our Joint Force requires and ultimately the nation requires. So to do that, I would offer that it's a foundational expertise that we must have to ensure the joint and coalition success required for our nation's objectives. And for us in USAF, and I'd argue that General Webb said this quite well from the beginning, it starts with our airmen. It starts with training and equipping our airmen with the right tools. We've got to stay ahead of our enemy and ensure that our airmen are agile in their minds and with the tools that they've got in their hands. And that begins with ensuring those tools are connected across all domains, and then importantly, connected with our allies, our partners, and those that would operate in the contested airspace that inevitably could provide ourselves an opportunity to achieve the objectives that are given to us. As we look at those specific tools, one area that I would offer we need to accelerate our investments in, it starts with NGAD and where we're going with NGAD and the freedom of maneuver that capability will provide for us and to our airmen, particularly as we look at the threats that are growing day by day. More broadly, as we talk about the sensors that be a part of our family of systems, another important sensor that we need to accelerate our investment as we look at the kill chain, our decision making, and the ways that we're going to operate in environments that will be challenged to all of us, to our airmen, to the Joint Force. I'd also argue that a key sensor that will improve our ability to detect, improve our ability to quickly execute the kill chain is the E7. Accelerating our investments such that we're able to leverage all the expertise that our partners have demonstrated over time, a capability that I've seen operate in combat, is important to where we need to go, and we need to get there quick and put this in the hands of our airmen. We've talked several times about, as we pull these different capabilities together for our airmen, ensuring that the network that we have is available, is in a manner that allows us to share this data across all domains and allows us to accelerate our decision making. Here in USAF, the FF, what we've been working through, and this has been in coordination with General Ray's team, with General Van Ovost's team, and with the broader intelligence community, is events that we describe as find, fix, track, and target events that we're executing on nearly a monthly basis. We're doing this to create a shared understanding of what it actually takes inside the kill chain to operate at speed in real world environments. We've been able to do this in the Baltics, we've done it in the Black Sea, we've done it with partners, and we've done it with the Joint Force, enabling us to refine our understanding of the specific areas that we need to enhance not only our understanding of the TTPs, but how we pull the data together to execute the kill chain. Now, I would offer one of the key lessons that we've learned from this is the importance of building muscle memory across the joint team to be able to execute this on day one in support of any particular mission objectives that we might be directed to execute. One of the areas that we've also found that we needed to accelerate in is our interoperability with our 5th gen partners here across Europe. Not only has these F2T2 events allowed us to uncover some of the challenges in the day-to-day TTPs, but importantly, some of the security challenges that are out there. We've been able to uncover areas that we need to accelerate our ability to share data with our partners, share it from 5th generation to 4th generation, ensure we can bring that combat power to bear in minimum time and at speed in our ability to support the combatant commander requirements. Now, as we've looked at this, it's been apparent to us that as we look at the broader kill chain and the threats that we're facing, it's also been important that we look at how we refine some of our operational TTPs and accelerate our ability to turn ConOps into actual action that our airmen have practiced and worked with our coalition and partners on. One of the key areas that we've been working on over the last year, 18 months, closely with PACAF, is Agile combat employment. Another area that we've been trying to refine the way we think about how we protect ourselves is from a base defense perspective. In both of these areas, I would argue we've been able to accelerate on the shoulders of our airmen our understanding of the TTPs and the tools required to execute those. Importantly, working closely with PACAF, we've been able to operationalize Agile combat employment, share this with all the other MAGCOMs, such that we've been able to train those multi-capable airmen in a manner that allows us to not only disperse, but simultaneously generate combat power, which importantly will be required not only to demonstrate from a deterrence perspective how we're going to do business, but also to show our airmen that we've got great confidence in their ability to execute that. From a base defense perspective, we've stood up the Ramstein Air Base Defense Systems Laboratory here at Ramstein. Our approach is to drive change from the bottom up, informing others on how we're going to connect sensors to first build situational awareness, and then ultimately provide the tools required to close the kill chain in rapid speed. And so we're going to continue to work that over time. So again, let me close there by saying thanks again to AFA for pulling this together. As I said up front, accelerating change is reminding us to start with our core missions and air superiority, reminding ourselves the importance of training and equipping our airmen with the right tools that are interoperable, and accelerating our understanding of operational concepts. And we look forward to sharing this with our partners, not only at the MAGCOM level, but with our partners here across Europe and Africa. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to discuss. With that, I think I'm handing it off to General Bunch. Thanks much.
Thanks, sir. And General Bunch, you're up.
Hey, Orville, thank you very much for the opportunity today. And thanks, AFA, for everything you do to support our families and our airmen. We really appreciate all that support. It's an honor to be here with my fellow MAGCOM commanders. You gave us a challenge. I could talk 7 minutes about what any one of our centers is actually doing and talk about the great work any one of our wings and airmen are doing, so I could fill the whole time. So what you're going to get a lot of today is wave top level of some of the things we're doing to embrace what General Brown's asking us to go do. And I think when you walk away, you'll understand we're all in and we know that we got to make changes and we got to go. First thing I'll talk about is we know that we're in a competition. The airmen of AFMC know that. And it's an honor for me to get to speak on the behalf of the 85,000 plus uniform and non-uniform airmen of Air Force Materiel Command who do their wartime mission every day when we talk about this competition and how they've embraced it. We know that based on our touch into research and development, our touch into buying systems and putting them out in the field and modernizing them, to how we test to make sure they're going to do what we do, to make sure the legacy and aged platforms are going to be able to be sustained and kept out in the field, and then tie that in with what we do to make sure the power projection platforms, our installations are available through the Installation Mission Support Center, that if we're not successful, the rest of the Air Force really can't be successful. I've often said that we're the most important MAGCOM. That's not an egotistical thing. That's not a, oh, look at us thing. That's a reality of that everything we do for all the other MAJCOMs. And we need to make sure we're executing our mission with that wartime, everyday focus to ensure that they are getting the support they need and they're able to go out and fight. We within AFMC have to enable the National Defense Strategy. We have to enable the calculus to work so that we can accelerate, change, or lose. And I am really proud of our airmen and how they've embraced that important role that they play and how on board they are with getting after what it takes to accelerate, change, or lose. All of the efforts that we have, and there are many of them, are built upon a focus on speed with discipline. Just running off and doing something doesn't work. You got to have the discipline to understand where you're going. You got to have the discipline to think through all the attributes that we need to put it out in the field. A few of the ones that we're tackling and continue to tackle, and these are only a few, we continue to focus on category management, saving millions of dollars and speeding up getting things out to the field. We continue to focus on open architectures and modular system, as some of our previous MAJCOM commanders have talked about. We continue to use innovative contracting approaches and make sure our airmen know how to use those and use the full toolkit that they have available. Execute the congressionally authorized 804 authorities so that we can do those. AFWorks moving to Air Force Materiel Command. That's another change that we've made, that we're focused on innovation and speed. We have increased and we're changing the way we've done our hiring. We've streamlined it. We've used the congressionally mandated authorities. We've increased our speed to acculturate our airmen in so that they're more valuable more quickly. We've got more involvement in air battle management system demos. We've increased that growth over time as that's occurred. We've stood up within the test center a multi-domain test force so that we can work across the enterprise and across the platforms and provide data. We've increased our ability to do distributed test execution so that we can do things in a more timely manner and may not have to travel as many people around. We continue to implement the S&T 2030 strategy with a focus on competition, partnerships, our workforce, and transitioning those technologies out to the field where they really need to be. Our efforts continue to focus on software, not just on secure DevOps, which is the trade that everyone's doing to put software out there, but it's on developing our airmen so they can acquire these systems. It's on creating the right tools, creating the right environments, and creating the right security so that all of our acquisition efforts across the Air Force can capitalize those and get capabilities out to the field in a more timely manner. We're adopting commercial best practices in our sustainment enterprise so that we can better support the older fleets and better support and be more efficient moving forward. Conditions-based maintenance now is becoming common. Advanced manufacturing and the use of that in aircraft, cold spray, laser depaint, and many, many others that we're using to try to be efficient, effective, and change the way we do it. What we can't lose track of, though, is our airmen are our foundation that we're built on. And we're doing things that not everybody talks about, like Food 2.0, so that our airmen for tomorrow are better fed, they're healthier, and they're able to move out. We continue our focus on female fitment to ensure that as we bring in a diverse workforce, that they are able to perform to their full potential. We focus on privatized housing because we recruit airmen, we retain families. We got to make sure we're doing those things to give them the right attributes. We're focused on our IT backbone to make sure that we can support our airmen who are doing our acquisition efforts. We're focused, at least right now, and will be in for the foreseeable future, on COVID. Preventing the spread in the workplace where I have to bring airmen in to work on airplanes and do those things, but also focused on telework so that maybe I don't have to bring them in and I can capitalize and still get the mission done. And last, and probably most importantly on the list I'll talk about for our airmen, is our efforts in diversity and inclusion. We have to create the work environment where each and every airman has the opportunity to perform to their full potential. And we have to make sure each and every airman feels valued in that work environment. We have to keep that focus, because if we don't, we won't have the workforce we need tomorrow, and we won't be able to do the things that General Brown espouses he wants us to be able to do. The other area that's a big focus for us, which was referenced earlier, is the digital campaign. We're just about at 1 year of starting our digital campaign. It's a great partnership with SAF-AQ and the U.S. Space Force. And we've got 6 lines of effort ranging from getting the IT backbone right all the way up to training and getting our airmen in the right place so they're able to operate here. We believe digital is going to apply not just to acquisition of weapon systems and that line. It applies to designing and building a new building that we put on one of our installations so that we know what's there and we can track it better. So we're applying it across everything that we're doing within the command. We're getting ready to kick off our big training efforts. We're going to do foundational training for a lot of our airmen and then more advanced training as we go forward. Many in the industry have asked, is this something that's going to go away? The answer short is no. It's going to continue to be a focus area because we believe it's going to be key to speed. A lot of this is what we're doing internal. What General Brown's also starting to talk about are things we have to do external. And I want to pull that string on one that I think is a good example of how we have to grow for the future. And that's the single appropriation pilot for software and digital technology. That takes 3 pots of money: sustainment, research, development, and test, and procurement, puts it into 1 pot so that in software, that program manager is given the agility and flexibility to move where he needs to get the program executed. That's been recommended by the Defense Innovation Board, the Defense Science Board, and FY16 NDAA. So this is a great step. This year it goes to Lieutenant General Thompson in the Space Force. Next year we will add 3 programs within the Air Force. Our airmen have to execute in that to build the trust that we need to go further in the future. We need to get that trust so that we can move at the speed of trust across all of government so that we can compete. So again, Orville to AFA, thank you very much. We are one AFMC powering the world's greatest Air Force. And with that, I kick it over to Cruiser.
Thanks, sir, and thanks, General Wilsbach.
Okay, good. Well, thanks, General Wright, and appreciate the previous MAJCOM commander's words. And I think the audience will probably gather that there's a lot of cooperation and collaboration between the MAJCOM commanders, and we might start to hear some common messages from all of us, which I think is actually a really, really good thing. And I'd like to thank AFA for the opportunity today to speak with you and to give you a PACAF perspective. And good morning from snowy Alaska. I'm visiting Elmendorf today. And I'd just like to take just a few minutes of time to talk about what we're thinking about with Accelerate, Change, or Lose in PACAF. To begin with, I think most everybody knows, but I'll just repeat it. The PACAF, the Indo-PACOM area of responsibility is enormous, 100 million square miles from the west coast of California all the way into the Indian Ocean and from the Arctic to the Antarctic. And so with that very large space comes with some challenges, communications and domain awareness, and just the tyranny of distance creates some challenges for us. And many of those places don't have roads between them. It's mostly a lot of open ocean. And so when we look at Accelerate, Change, or Lose, we've got to think through, how do we project air power in this environment. And one of the things that we're looking at very closely, in fact, we're incorporating in just about every exercise that we do, from the wing exercises all the way into the joint exercise. And in fact, right now, COPE North is happening in Guam, and we're doing an ACE, an Agile Combat Employment aspect of COPE North. And we've got some of our allies and partners there doing and very interested in ACE with us. And so when you look at the Indo-Pacific theater, there's 25,000 islands in our AOR, and many of them have airfields on them, and we've looked at every piece of concrete that there is and evaluated them for possible use so that we can disperse. And we found during exercises, this makes a big difference to our competitors and our threat when they have to accommodate in their targeting scheme, many, many more airfields where we could project power from than just a few. And so we find it very important inside of PACAF to accelerate our capability with respect to ACE so that we can actually execute our plans in a dispersed manner that Agile Common Employment would allow. And so one of the things that we're doing at all these exercises is conducting a syllabus to generate multi-capable airmen. And I know General Webb talked about that in his presentation, but we're doing that as well in PACAF. And what I want is when an airman comes to PACAF, we have to expect that every airman in PACAF is multi-capable, and some with more experience will have more skills than others. But this has to be foundational to what we do. And as I mentioned, the tyranny of distance and logistical challenges that come with our AOR, just getting the one expert that can conduct a certain skill to the place where that skill needs to be conducted, puts a big challenge on our mobility community. Whereas if you have airmen that have multiple skills, then they might already be at that location, and then the fix can occur, for example, and the jet can fly. So that is our strategy for multi-capable airmen and Agile combat employment. And as we look toward the summer, we're looking at conducting another exercise in Alaska that will turn Agile combat employment, which has predominantly been an Air Force thing, into joint. So we plan on incorporating the U.S. Navy as well as the U.S. Marines into a very large multi-base, multi-week exercise in the summer that will really expand our capability to do Agile combat employment. And as you expand that and you think about the environment and our principal competitor, China, with their objectives, if there ever is a conflict in here, to have it be a contested environment, especially with respect to communications. We're also trying to expand our ability to command and control the joint force by experiments using Advanced Battle Management System, or ABMS, to allow us to do joint all-domain command and control in that contested environment. And so as a part of our Northern Edge exercise in the summer here in Alaska, we'll be incorporating about 70 experiments, many of which will be ABMS, and we'll challenge ourselves in the joint environment, dispersed doing Agile combat employment, to be able to continue to project air power to achieve our objectives. And if I could just switch gears on just a little bit here and talk about air superiority, and General Harrigian mentioned this earlier, and I couldn't agree with him more. And we find that in exercises that we do here in the Indo-Pacific theater, that air superiority is foundational to the joint force being able to conduct operations. And where we don't have air superiority, it challenges us, and where we do, we thrive. And so as we move forward, we really have to think about making sure that we can attain air superiority. And a previous speaker mentioned that it's not a birthright. And air superiority, we've been conducting operations in the Middle East with near air dominance almost the entire time. That may not be the case here in a future conflict in the Indo-Pacific. And so we've got to think about what can be done. And the first thing in my mind is domain awareness. And with the tools that we have here in the Pacific with ground-based radar, we have a lot of gaps, and those gaps are filled by airborne moving target indicators, or the E3 in our case. And our partners actually have, some of our partners have purchased the E7, Australia and the Republic of Korea as an example. And that's a great platform. And I agree with General Harrigian, the E7 would make a great platform to replace our E3s here in the Pacific. And we're challenged with the E3. It's an old airframe, and our airmen are working, just working so hard to keep those aircraft in the air, but they are challenged with maintenance issues to be able to provide. And then the technology is certainly a generation older than what the E7 can provide, and that technology will allow us to really strengthen the kill chain. In fact, expand the kill chain. So that we can have the upper hand in the battle. And then also NGAD, and also the weapons that go with NGAD. So when you think about our major competitor here, we have to have a kill ratio that is way greater than 1-to-1 or even 2-to-1. We have to have a pretty substantial kill ratio, and so that's why I believe that NGAD is something that we have to have along with the weapons that go with it. And it can't be one of these 15 or 20-year acquisition programs. We actually need it now. And so we need to take advantage of digital engineering and digital experimentation, as General Bunch mentioned, so that we can field these new capabilities as fast as possible, so that we can retain our edge. And that will provide a deterrence value. And then if God forbid, we end up having to fight this fight, that we can win. And so with that, let me pass it off to my very good friend, General Jackie Van Ovost. Thanks again for the opportunity, and I'll stand by for questions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Cruiser. Thanks, Orville and the AFA team for this opportunity for me to join my colleagues today and discuss how together we're accelerating change across our Air Force. You know, at Air Mobility Command, we project the joint force across contested domains and deliver hope always. So we must be fully integrated across the MAJCOMs and across the joint force. All right next to air superiority, rapid global mobility is foundational to our joint force maneuver. So from an AMC perspective, it's imperative that we accelerate our shift away from an outdated logistics paradigm into one that will provide rapid global mobility at the speed, scale, and agility required by the joint force to compete, deter, and win across the competition continuum. Frankly, the logistics model that we have perfected for the last 2 decades will simply not ensure success of the joint force against the near-peer adversaries and increased threat environments we're beginning to face today and will surely face tomorrow. Our near-peer adversaries are contesting us in every domain. Their advanced long-range weapon systems are providing credible threats to our logistics hubs, forcing us away from those efficient force laydowns that we've been so used to. They're already cyber attacking our military and civilian logistics IT systems. We will clearly have to fight to get to the fight. Our evolving global O plans, our joint force designs, and our new weapon system investments are all leading towards an increased demand on military logistics. Competing daily through dynamic force employment has caused a mini surge in air mobility requirements. And with 85% of the joint force located in CONUS, projecting combat power across 2 oceans at the speed and scale required to deter and win is no easy task. But we're transitioning away from service-led capabilities into more integrated joint solutions. The joint warfighting concept is establishing a new American way of war. And the joint concept for contested logistics is ushering in a new logistics paradigm, redefining how we execute logistics against our near-peer adversaries. As the air component to U.S. Transportation Command, we own air logistics. We own rapid global mobility, and we must aggressively integrate, exercise, and sharpen these new concepts as they're coming online. The essentiality of rapid global mobility to the success of the joint force cannot be overstated. The joint force stands on our shoulders to rapidly project and deliver combat power anywhere in the world on a moment's notice. If we fail, the joint force fails. So we won't. Accordingly, AMC is focusing and accelerating, focusing on our 4 core missions to ensure that we can provide the Joint Force credible, rapid global mobility capacity, and accelerating forward by embracing campaigns of demonstration and experimentation to drive learning and capability development for the future high-end fight, to include non-traditional use of the MAF, like being an airborne cloud, data processing, and palletized munitions. For some tangible examples that our airmen are seeing today, 1, we're ensuring strategic deterrence by aggressively pursuing more resilient NC3 capabilities for our tankers. We're ensuring the relevance of our global AOC by uncovering data and executing a DevSecOps approach to gain decision advantage. We're getting ahead of the reliability and sustainment drag of our aging fleet by leading the Air Force with conditions-based maintenance integration across all of our weapon systems. CBM is a game changer. It's using advanced data analytics and predictive analysis to transform our maintenance and supply into proactive rather than reactive systems. We're leveraging advancements in synthetic environments to provide our crews with increased reps and sets to more realistically align with the high threat environments that we're going to face. We're participating in more large-scale joint exercises than ever before, ensuring that increased integration with our combat arms brothers and sisters. Our 34th Combat Training Squadron has shifted their focus from the tactical integration that served us so well during the Middle East to serve as the command venue for emerging concepts and integration as we build strategic capabilities for the high-end fight. Likewise, our airmen at the U.S. Air Force Expeditionary Center has shifted their concept development and their curriculum to focus on expeditionary operations in the near-peer fight. We've unleashed our tactical airlift, en route, and contingency response units to test and experiment with those ACE concepts. In an effort to be lighter, leaner, and more agile, our contingency response forces have already decreased their lift requirements to open air bases by 36 pallet positions or 2 C-17s worth. We are breaking away from the prescriptive fail-safe culture of efficiency that we're used to, and we're accelerating towards a learning, safe-to-fail culture where, as Dr. Roper put it, 50% success rate in experimentation is just about right. Look, our airmen are the smartest, most technically advanced airmen ever. And it's our job as commanders to create the culture and environment where they are inspired and empowered to accelerate this change. No matter what exquisite capabilities we bring to the table, it will always be our airmen that are a foundation to our success. What I ask our airmen everywhere, no matter what their AFSC is to think anew about competition and how we as AMC and for the Joint Force better be prepared to compete, deter, and win. To be curious, to ask why, and bring increased awareness of the capabilities within the digital landscape to solve our complex problems and develop these new capabilities. To be innovative, to always ask, how can I make this better? To make those connections, to seek out others who can solve that last piece of the puzzle. Bottom line, culture eats strategy for lunch. Joe Bunch mentioned, ensuring a culture that celebrates and champions diversity and inclusion, a culture that inspires all of our airmen to share their ideas is the only way we're going to leap ahead and remain, as the chief said, the most dominant and respected Air Force in the world. Thanks again for this opportunity. And over to ACC, General Grace Kelly.
Thanks, ma'am. And General Kelly, don't be rushed. If you need to go, a little bit beyond your 7 minutes, thanks for wrapping up, and we'll make this work today. So thanks, sir, and thanks, Jackie.
No, thanks, General Wright, for setting this up, as the others already mentioned, and the opportunity to comment. I think everyone on here is looking forward to restarting our in-person AFA symposiums in the near future. With respect to General Brown's directive and today's theme of accelerate, change, or lose, it's Air Combat Command's job to operationalize that guidance for the combat air forces. So we're laser focused on 5 key requirements of a modern period warfight. Some that have already been mentioned. A warrior culture, credibility, capacity, and capability. And then, of course, the required sustainment apparatus to ensure that our culture, credibility, capacity, and capability is resilient, neither fragile nor fleeting, because fragility anywhere is going to be vulnerability everywhere. To that end, per General Webb's comments, we first have to instill an expeditionary warrior culture. We can't have fragile airmen. They have to be resilient, adaptive. They must be afforded time to train together as a cohesive team before they're required to fight together as a cohesive team in a new location, which might not be a main operating base or a hub. It might be an austere spoke that's a fair distance from any supporting hub or larger main operating base. Per item 2, credibility. Credibility is essentially the recurring combat skills and the training that replicates engaging a peer adversary in a pacing theater. It requires changing agile combat employment from episodic and niche to recurring and mainstream. And it requires change where training against a contested electromagnetic spectrum isn't a contingency, it's actually the norm. When it comes to our capacity and capability, as a few of the other MAJCOM commanders have talked about, we're not as powerful as what we own as a service on a spreadsheet. We're only as powerful as what we can project and protect forward, sustain, and credibly operate. So we have to have high utility capacity that's usable because it's sustainable and viable. Our combat Air Force fleet is twice as old as the United States Navy's and 3 times as old as the Royal Australian Air Force. So that means every day we are literally hemorrhaging readiness to care, feed, and supply an older fleet. Viable means really just a full up round that has the current relevant sensors, weapons, and up-to-date modifications, hardware, software, weapons needed to compete. Changing the age of our fleet requires that we improve our narrative to effectively convey the debilitating impacts of an old and high maintenance weapon system. And part of our required change, and also changing the collective understanding that our service, and I would say that our nation has of our adversaries. You've seen Chinese and Russian advances in stealth, weapons, precision navigation, et cetera. And those are all credible gains, but they don't keep me up at night. But if you've heard General Brown's recent comments on the electromagnetic spectrum, that's what keeps me up at night. Our adversary's ability to operate across and jam across the EMS is significant. Now I'm talking extremely low frequencies down to 3 hertz through HF, VHF, UHF, all the way through our sensing and C2 bands, way to the right, the IR spectrum and ultraviolet wavelengths. Their EMS advances, combined with 5G and quantum computing and artificial intelligence, are what they'll use to close their red kill chains and what they'll use to break blue kill chains. This is not a closely held secret. This is what they're telling us. And so as kind of a history nut, one of the most quoted military figures in World War II was the British Army General Bernard Law Montgomery. And one of his most famous and accurate quotes was when he stated, quote, "If we lose the war in the air, we'll lose the war, and we're going to lose it quickly." I'd contend that if we lose the war in the electromagnetic spectrum, we're going to lose the war, and we're going to lose it quickly. So to that end, we have to have our high-end capability that's affordable and truly resilient across EMS so we can penetrate an adversary's airspace, cyberspace, and decision space at a time, place of our choosing. As already mentioned by both General Harrigian and General Wilsbach, that we have to acknowledge that unlike our allies who operate the E-7 Wedgetail, the U.S. does not possess a state-of-the-art airborne moving target indicator capability. AMTI is a key tenet of air superiority, and if we don't unambiguously articulate the asymmetric advantage that we've enjoyed from air superiority over the last 70 years, and when I say we, I mean we as a joint force and we as a nation, and if we don't clearly explain the strategic requirement to fully fund next generation air dominance, those items will become the most expensive money we ever save. And as already mentioned, neither air superiority nor victory are an American birthright, and they're both at significant risk. I, for one, am confident that we'll generate better solutions once we acknowledge the real possibility of losing a peer fight. Or to quote President Biden last week when referring to China, where he said, quote, "If we don't get moving, they're going to eat our lunch," unquote. So don't get me wrong, our combat air force is strong. But when it comes to accelerate, change, or lose, the theme of today, if you don't like change, you're going to dislike your relevance even more, and you're going to outright hate a kinetic defeat. Again, thanks for the ability to comment. I think we all have to agree that our geopolitics, our budgets, and our adversaries are changing. So if we're committed to stay relevant, if we're committed to win, we have to change along with them. And we have phenomenal airmen that are ready to adapt to expeditionary warfighting. Our training regimen can and will adapt to agile contested ops. We have great high-end capability, but it needs to stay cutting edge. It needs to thrive across multi-spectral environment, and it needs to become more affordable. And we have strong capacity bench, but it has to stay sustainable and viable with adequate supply chains and required modifications. So again, huge thanks for setting this up. It's great to see everybody smiling faces on the net, and appreciate the ability to comment today, sir.
Well, as we close out our incredible MAJCOM Commander session, no one better to wrap up than Lieutenant General Jim Slife, our Commander, Air Force Special Operations Command. Jim, thanks for your time. We know you're busy, as are your air commandos, worldwide, 24/7. So for our audience, Jim, it's an honor for the Air Force Association to host you. And thank you again. The stage is yours.
Well, thanks very much, General Wright. It's great to be with you and the AFA and all of our teammates that are gathered here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak for just a little bit on what Air Force Special Operations Command is doing to accelerate change. One of the things that I frequently talk about in my engagements with the Air Commandos of AFSOC is that the first part of AFSOC is AF. We are airmen who happen to be involved in special operations, not the other way around. And I really believe that the service components of the U.S. Special Operations Command are always the most effective when we're closest to our parent service. And so one of the hallmarks of really the last several years at AFSOC, predating my command tenure, General Webb, my predecessor, certainly had this as a focus area as well, has been a desire to increase the connective tissue between AFSOC and the Air Force. And I think SOCOM will benefit from that. And so we have really continued that effort over the last couple of years. And I think, AFSOC has some unique things to bring to bear for the Air Force. I think by virtue of the fact that we have access to a fairly light and agile requirements, programming, and fielding process through the U.S. Special Operations Command, we can really serve as an agile test bed for concepts that may have utility across the broader Air Force. And so we've had a couple of good success stories with that I'd like to share just a little bit with you about some of those things. But, there's value that accrues to SOCOM when the broader Air Force adapts and perhaps builds upon things that AFSOC is able to do for the Air Force. And so just as a very brief example, last year, as we had a conversation inside the Air Force about palletized munitions, we're looking for a platform that we could use for experimenting with palletized munitions and cargo aircraft and in-flight retargeting things of that nature, to enable us to bring higher volume of precision fires to bear on a potential adversary somewhere around the globe. And so I raised the hand and said, hey, AFSOC knows a little something about turning cargo airplanes into fires platforms. We've got a long history with the AC-130 gunship. It's a very, very lethal and flexible aircraft. And so I wanted to leverage some of our history with that to benefit the Air Force. And so we were able to, in very, very short order, start doing live testing with precision munitions launched out of the back of an AFSOC cargo airplane with very little modification, using hatch mount antennas and that type of thing. We were able to demonstrate during an ABMS on-ramp demo over the fall. We were able to demonstrate the in-flight retargeting of a long-range precision munition employed out of the back of an AFSOC C-130. And so this type of thing, I think, brings value to the Air Force, because you can make very, very quick turns using AFSOC as an experimentation platform that has broader value to the rest of the Air Force. Another example is, as we shift towards kind of agile combat employment as the wave of the future, the way we intend to employ air power in the future, AFSOC has access to some really interesting units and concepts of action that have proven themselves over many years. There are units, Air Force units inside of SOCOM, that this is the way they operate, is with a very light footprint of multifunctional airmen that are able to quickly establish and operate a forward operating base and then break it down and get on the road again before a significant signature is established. And so we in AFSOC are experimenting right now at one of our bases with building and routinely force generating a small unit, a small squadron size worth of airmen that are all cross-trained, multifunctional, and are linked up with our operating forces on a routine basis. And so the first time they meet them isn't when they show up someplace to employ, but rather they train up together, they exercise together, and then they deploy together with an organic support footprint, along with the ops and maintenance and special tactics teams that we put in the field on a fairly regular basis. And I think that is a model that could work for the Air Force. There will certainly be lessons learned for the broader Air Force using AFSOC as an innovation platform. So those are just a couple of examples of places where AFSOC is I hope, adding value to the broader Air Force through some of our pathfinding initiatives. It's been really exciting for us to be a part of a number of larger Air Force exercises and operations and continuing to grow the connective tissue between the air commandos of AFSOC and the broader Air Force. So thanks, General Wright, for giving me the opportunity to speak just a little bit about that today.
Well, thank you all so much. Just a couple closing points. Beyond enduring thanks for your time, all of you very busy. We'd also, and I think you'd all acknowledge, recognize that under the heading of Accelerate, Change, or Lose, our Space Force and their leadership is rapidly pushing up the throttle. And I know you all would agree with me that Lieutenant General Stephen Whiting, General Raymond, and D.T. Thompson are all three of your partners in everything you do as our Space Force and our Guardians integrate with you and bring so much to the fight. So this Aerospace Warfare Symposium is really planned to be 50-50 about our airmen and our Guardians and what the Department of the Air Force brings to the fight. The second point I would make is you helped your AFA immeasurably. We have really one objective in supporting dominant air and space forces and our airmen and our Guardians, and that's to be ever more credible in our advocacy for what is my job, and that is to constantly make the point that the most lethal arm of a more capable and lethal joint force is our airmen and our Guardians. Or to put it another way, the best taxpayer bang for the buck is to invest in our Department of the Air Force. In closing, we've also constantly, your Air Force Association, reached out as directly as possible in programs like our COVID-19 Airmen's Assistance Fund, AFA.CAAF. We were able to, through first sergeants primarily, donate almost $43,000 last year to those airmen and guardians and families in need to get through this unprecedented time in our lives to continue to fight through the COVID attack. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again. It's an honor just to be on the net with you. Who'd have thought that after 50 years of doing this, I'd be looking at all of you and just have the opportunity, the honor to be with you, and the gift of being able to thank you for all you do. Have a great day. God bless our Air Force and our nation, and certainly our airmen and guardians.